Welcome to Our Nona. My name is Kevin Kendrick. I'm your host, and each week we are bringing you local businesses, community members, and local nonprofits that we think you need to hear from. And today I am joined by not just a roofer, Bela Roofing, but one of my friends, someone that I've known for quite a while, Mr. Matt Reynolds with Bela Roofing. So Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here, man. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
So Matt, we're going to talk about Lake Nona in general, and maybe even from South Orlando, because you grew up in South Orlando. I grew up in South Orlando. So we've got a lot in common. But let's talk about roofing first, okay? Because as you just said, you went from swabbing boogers to slinging shingles. So let's talk a little bit about, the early days of Bela Roofing, but kind of pick us up at the tail end of your time with Nona Science, where you're swabbing for boogers for COVID and things like that.
Yeah, so, let's go back almost a couple years now. I was in the medical industry, and I was blessed to be part of a molecular lab. And I was one of the owners, and I got bought out on a great turnout, great situation. And at that point, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My uncle had owned Bela Roofing for several years prior. And he's always kind of been my mentor in life, just someone I can turn to for advice or, anything I have a hard decision, someone that I just lean on. And we've always wanted to work together. And so when I left the lab industry completely, he and I would always meet, once a week and kind of catch up or, several times a week on the phone. And, he was kind of at the point where he's like, I think this thing can be scaled up. And in every venture I've done, typically my role has been vice president of sales, right? I'll build a sales team, I'll build a sales force, and I'll get it going, right? My early days, right out of college, I worked for Johnson & Johnson, and then I went into the biotech industry, and I was always a national trainer or some sort of involved in training, and I've always worked with growing a sales team. And so by the grace of God, my uncle and I worked out a great, partnership. Right. And so for the first year, I was just a sales guy. Right. He's like, you've got to learn everything about roofs to make sure, one, that we're going to be able to work together like we think we are, but two, that you really like it. So the first year, I was just a sales guy. And I went out there and, brother, he didn't hold back. I mean, I had to learn how to measure the roofs. I had to learn how to do material orders. I had to learn how to do permitting and notice of commencements and paperwork with cities and counties in different jurisdictions. And, fast forward, now I'm a partner. We have a sales team. We have a project manager. And it's been a blessing. And it has grown exponentially. And a lot of it has just been with, like we're doing this, this meeting right now.
So let's talk about, so I'm in the industry of selling houses. You're in the industry of putting roofs on houses. So we collaborate quite a bit. When you first started, working at Bela Roofing, you're like, Kevin, I want to be your roofing guy. And at the time, I had a roofing guy, and that just kind of fizzled apart. So it was kind of good timing. But my biggest issue that I had is I told you, I said, Matt, here's my thing. I need someone that if you say you're going to be there at 1 o'clock, I need you to be there at 12:59, or you need to call the person and tell them that you're going to be late. But if you say you're going to do it, do it. Because roofers have a reputation. Everybody out there, roofers have a reputation of not showing up. And that was my big thing is like, Matt, we're friends. I don't mind mixing friends and business, especially doing what we do. But if you're going to tell someone you got to show up, you show up. And talk to me about building relationships. Because at the same time, you're connecting with someone. You're at the project for 2 days, 3 days maybe. Yeah, you got to do some stuff on the front end. Talk to me about building relationships and actually showing up for your customers.
Well, we hear that all the time, by the way, right? Hey, you're the third roofer I've called, and the first two didn't show up, and then the one guy showed up 2 days later. We hear it all the time. No one wakes, at least no one that I know, no one wakes up one day and says, hey, man, I just can't wait to cut a check to put a new roof on my house, right? You just don't hear that, right? You wake up and say, oh my gosh, I want a new Tesla. Or, I want a new nice watch, or, hey, I want to plan a vacation. I don't know anyone, and if you're out there, please let me know because I want to meet you. But I don't know anyone that has woken up and says, I want to put a roof on my house. So when you take that in consideration, you're thinking about when you do this, it's one of the biggest obstacles, but yet the biggest securities you have in your house. If your roof is leaking, that can lead to damage to drywall, electrical, everything, right? Flooring. So when I got into this, the first thing I thought about was customer service. You know, I remodeled my house, and I could write a book about what things to do and what things not to do. So coming from medicine, when you deal with doctors, when they need something, you have to act right then and there. Prior to that, growing up in a family that's based in the hospitality industry, I was always instilled the customer's always right. And so when I got into this, I thought, how am I going to be different? And I am very OCD. I write everything down on a pad, and my day is not done until I have scratched everything off that pad or I have rescheduled it. But if I had to reschedule, I coordinate with how I'm rescheduling and who I'm rescheduling it with. And I think it's a great question, because what you're asking me is what has led Bela Roofing to have the growth we've had. Is when we tell you we're going to be there, we're going to be there.
Right.
When we tell you we're going to come and look at your roof, we're going to look at your roof. I mean, we've done deals together, and I used to use this joke, but unless it's torrential downpour, if I can get on your roof and I need to get on your roof, I'm going to get on your roof.
Right.
I've had neighbors tell me in your neighborhood, hey, Kevin, you know, yeah, you sent this guy, but it's pouring down rain. And you're like, he'll get up there if he can get up there. If we tell you we're going to do it, we're going to do it. I talk to people about roofs how I want to be talked about if I was buying a roof.
So it's interesting because, you know, you made the comment, people don't wake up in the morning and they want a new roof. But I think for like about 30 days, at some point last year, Yvette would wake up. She's like, we need a new roof. You got to call Matt. I'm like, we don't need a new roof. You know, our home is only like 12 years old. We don't need a new roof. But literally, she would wake up and those would be the first words out of her mouth is, we need a new roof. Eventually, so you've done 2 roofs for us. You did one on one of our investment properties, and then also in our personal residence. So for me, it's not just about referring someone that shows up. It's I've been a customer too, and I've seen the craftsmanship on both. And of course, when I can then send pictures to my insurance agent, he goes, actually, we can get you a lesser premium. I'm like, yes.
Awesome.
I like that as well. All right, Matt, let's talk about roofs and homeowners insurance, because we see every day on Facebook, I'm either getting dropped or my insurance premium just went up like $3,000 because my roof is too old. But my roof's not too old. I got 25-year shingles, but my roof is 15 years and a day old. What's the issue with homeowners insurance, and why are they cracking down on like, hey, newer roofs need to be placed on homes?
So we're going to cover 3 quick points, right? So one, the first thing, and I hear this every day, is, well, when I built this home or when I purchased this home, they told me it was a 25-year shingle. That's a correct, fair statement. But keep in mind, that's a 25-year average based across the entire United States. So let's think about weather that New York gets, Boston, extreme snow, right? What we get, extreme heat, extreme, tropical weather, rain, sideways rain, hurricanes. Let's talk about what Texas gets. Texas, it's either extremely hot or they're getting flooded. You have to take all that in consideration. So when they say it's a 25-year shingle, just keep in mind that's an average. So they're going to compare Florida to Texas to Arkansas, right?
It's a 25-year shingle in a lab.
That's exactly right. That's a great way to put it, right?
Yeah.
The next thing, if I had $1 for every time that I get a phone call from a homeowner who says, oh my gosh, I just got this threatening letter and they're going to drop me. That's the reason, is because we live in such a tropical area. We get so many hurricanes that even though it's a 25-year average on the shingle, the homeowners insurance companies, they know what claims are coming in, and they see that most roofs in Florida, unfortunately, don't last 25 years. So because of that is why they start contacting you at 12 years, 15 years, 17 years, whatever your policy states, and they say, listen, we're going to drop you or you need to get a new roof. And it's because they're not looking at the lifespan of the average shingle. They're looking at what they see claims coming in.
Right.
And then the third thing that you brought up is basically when you get that phone call, yes, it's a state of panic and it's a state of hysteria because you're afraid to lose your homeowner's insurance. Just know that we can work with you in a timely manner, that most roofs beginning to end, you can have done from the time you sign the proposal to the time you're done and closed out with a certificate of completion from your local jurisdiction in 30 days. Don't panic. we're going to work with you. We're going to get it done as fast as possible, and we're going to provide you the documentation of everything, like we did with you, to send to your insurance company.
Yeah, let's talk about real quick the comparison of a company like yours, which for the most part, you're word of mouth. You know, I don't think I've ever gotten a postcard or a newsletter or even a marketing email from you, versus the people that go and knock on your door and say, hey, there was a hailstorm here 9 months ago. I'm going to climb up on your roof and see if I can get you a new roof and a claim, which, you know, most of those people are, you know, they're tracking down the insurance industry, and which is one of the reasons why our premiums have gone up. Like, talk about maybe not those guys as much as how you've built your reputation through word of mouth with very little advertising.
Right. So I would say 90% of our business is through word of mouth and referral based from customers or from people that we know in the community, right? I moved to Lake Nona in 2005. I grew up in South Orlando. I went to Boone High School. I went to University of Central Florida. I've always just been in the community. I've always been an advocate for Orlando. I think that has helped a lot. There is a business model out there for going and following storms and knocking on doors. And I'm not going to knock it. I'm not going to put it down. There's been a lot of great companies that have built, and they've done very well with that business model. The flip side to that business model is that not every time, but a lot of times when you hear a bad situation with a roofer, it typically starts with that scenario, right? Now, the one thing I also want to point out is that roofers, we are there to help. If you have a leak or you know, a hurricane came through and we get on your roof and you're missing shingles and you know you need a new roof, if you call me, we're going to be there. We want to help. But to say that that's my business model, you know, am I going to say that I would never do it? No, because I don't know. Right now, we're not at that point. Have we ever gone out after a storm? If we've been in a neighborhood after the hurricanes, right? So we didn't go out door knocking after the hurricane, but our phones rang off the hook. I'll never forget. The storm passed. It was like 5:48 in the morning. And, you know, I'm home with my family making sure my own house is safe. And at 6:15, my phone just started going crazy. Like,
you're everybody's best friend at that point.
It was insane, right? So if we go to an area where we have calls coming in from referrals and we see, oh my gosh, you know, this neighborhood has really been damaged, we'll go out and offer help. But to say that my business model is going around and following all the different apps and that's just not who we are. We've been blessed and fortunate enough where we get out in the community, we get out and network. We deal with a lot of realtors. We deal with just a lot of people in general. You know, you've seen me at Nona Blue, right? I think,
bro, I haven't just like when you say I've seen you at Nona Blue, that's the assumption that I've seen you once, maybe twice.
Right.
Dude, I see you at Nona Blue every week.
Right. I mean, but it's crazy. I've had people come up to me in Nona Blue and they're like, you don't know who I am, but you did my neighbor's roof and I've seen you as one of the owners on the job site and I want a roof quote.
Yeah, and you know what I would tell them? I'd say, hey, buy me a drink and let's talk. So well, let's shift to kind of Lake Nona. But before I do, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing all black because every time I see you, you're always in all black. So I got to ask, is there a reason for the Johnny Cash all black look?
So to say there's a reason would be no, right? I think it was one of those things where my dad, who I lost to cancer, he always wore black. My dad used to tell me a story like when he would come into church, he'd be like, oh, Johnny Cash is coming in. And I guess it's just one of those things where I just like the color. I remember as a kid, I had a black and white checkerboard comforter on my bed. And I remember my grandmother buying it and being like, this is really what you want? It's always been a thing. I just like the color black. I used to always do black cars. Now I do white cars. But I used to always do black cars. They just, with OCD, they drive me crazy trying to keep them clean. But I just love the color black. And now it's kind of become like my gimmick, right? Everyone knows that I'm going to be in black.
You're either all black Matt, you know, or your tattoo Matt.
Tattoo Matt,
which, you know, most people don't realize, but Matt's got, you know, tattoo sleeves.
Yeah.
And so it's funny. I never knew you were tattoo Matt until, ironically, Andrew Jagus, who was probably, 20 years old now.
Yeah.
He's like, you know tattoo Matt? And I'm like, dude, like, who doesn't know Matt? But let's talk about kind of like the early days of Lake Nona, because you're one of those people, you know, and we're not talking to the old timers like that grew up in the rural settlement who are like they're the The OGs.
Oh, yeah.
But you and I, we've been in Lake Nona. You came in what, '05?
'05.
I think I'm '07, '08, something like that. You also grew up in South Orlando. Did you ever, when you were going to Boone, did you ever come to Lake Nona?
Oh,
Lake
yeah.
Narcoossee?
Yeah, so we had friends that back then went to Oak Ridge High School.
Because they lived in the rural settlement.
Correct, and they lived on the lake. So we
Yeah.
would come out here, and back then, wakeboarding was way different. It was mostly knee boarding back then.
Yeah, I did that, yeah.
But, I mean, that was nothing. You had the 7-Eleven at 528 in Narcoossee, and that was pretty much
If you remember, you had the 7-Eleven, and then across the street, you had the parking lot.
Correct.
For the ride share for people that were going down
Correct.
the old Beeline,
Yep.
which is now the Beach Line.
Yep.
And, of course, we all just call by the numbers, 528. So when I was a kid, Narcoossee was a dirt road.
Yeah.
Rural settlement was here, and Isle of Pines and all of that was, but we went to Moss Park. My mom took me to Moss Park, and I mean, it was nothing. Talk to me about like life in Lake Nona, growing up with your kids and making the connections with the families that you have, and like that it was special. Because I've seen you interacting with these families, and I'm like, man, that's really cool, but I didn't have those relationships. So talk to me a little bit about building those relationships with other families.
Yes, I mean, we moved out here, like I said, in 2005. We're on our second house, which we moved in 2010. Mm-hmm. And immediately, when we moved out here in 2005, there wasn't a lot to do, right? We had a handful of restaurants, we had a Publix. So because of that, we left downtown Orlando. My wife and I were married, and we knew we wanted to start a family. So we went through this process. Do we want to raise a family in downtown Orlando, or do we maybe want to get out and have a newer home and expand? So we had some friends that used to live similar to close to us in downtown, and they built out here. So we came out here one night to actually watch a UFC fight on pay-per-view. And I remember leaving. I told my wife, I'm like, that house is great. The neighborhood's great. I could see us doing this.
Right.
So kind of behind my wife's back, I inquired about this neighborhood, and I set up a meeting where I wanted to come look. So I came out here and looked, and I was like, okay, I like the model center. I like the salespeople in there. Brought my wife back and sold her on the idea. We moved out here. In 2005, we built a great relationship, which some of those people have now moved to other states.
Right.
I still keep in contact with them on Facebook and social media. Some of those people have moved into other neighborhoods in the Lake Nona area. I still keep in contact with them. But in 2010, when I moved into my current house, you talk about that neighborly bond, right? I go to the local YMCA. I see all my neighbors. This New Year's, I just went on vacation, and everyone that was on vacation was my neighbor.
Right.
I've gone on cruises with my neighbors. Usually one night, if not 2 nights, I'm going to dinner in some way, shape, or form with one of my neighbors. We have thought about, my kids, my oldest son goes to UCF, but both of my children, my youngest son is still at Boone, but both of my children went to Boone or go to Boone. We have gone back and forth with moving. I've called you. I mean, you're my realtor, right?
Yeah.
I've called you about going back and forth to Lake Conway. I can't.
Right.
It's never felt right. It's never been, my wife and I have never been on the same page. It just has never flowed smoothly. And I've always had that mindset that if we're going to move, we've got to be on the same page. Timing has to be right, and we've got to agree upon it. And it's never been the right time. And now, I'm at the point where, I'll be 48 this year, and I want to pay my house off. So now I'm not going.
Right.
I'm at that point where we have so many friends in the community. We're tied into so many restaurants, so many establishments. I mean, I could sit here and name off all the local places I go. Yeah. It's home. It's home.
Let's talk about the local establishments, because you're like me. You're going to see. Actually, let me back that up. Let's talk about the local restaurants and local businesses, because you're like me. You're a very support local guy.
Absolutely.
You might have the once a year, twice a year date night at a Chroma or a Canvas, but you're at Nona Blue, you're at Nona Social, Azteca. You're at the places that are owned by local people. Like you and I've been to a Magic game with Gerardo, who owns Azteca.
Correct.
And and we've hung out and had adult beverages with the owners of Nona Blue.
I've sat at Piazza Italia and had bottles of wine with the owners of Piazza Italia. It is home, but it's home in such a special way because, in my opinion, we go to these local establishments, but I have to applaud and give kudos to the people that own them that are also in this area, because they help make it feel home.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, we go to a Magic game with Gerardo. I have a glass of wine with Fabio or Emilio. The owners of Nona Blue, they sit down when we're having an appetizer. Nona Social, it's just, they help create this feeling just like we do.
Yeah. I think the first small business owner, and he came before most people, is Larry Lemos, Larry and Sonia. And it was funny because I hadn't been at Dunkin' Donuts in a while. And so just randomly out of the blue, I think he knew I haven't been there. So he sends me a gift card. Of course, what I do, I go in the next day, and his manager's like, she goes, yeah, Larry asked when was the last time you were in. She's like, I haven't seen him in a while. So he sends me a gift card. So, of course, I go back in there. And so, and people on the outside, they say, hey, that's a corporate owned. No, that's a franchise. That's a local business, that employs local people. Whereas, look, not knocking the true corporate restaurants. I mean, we're going to visit those, but I like supporting the local business.
Great example, right? You and I, good friends with Larry. I went, again, with neighbors, not this spring break, last spring break, 2 spring breaks ago, to New York City. In New York, they had 2 donuts at Dunkin' that I absolutely fell in love with.
Yeah.
I get back to Orlando, and I'm like, man, Larry, I wish you guys had this stuffed, like, apple crumb donut and this other called a butternut. And he's like, no problem. I'm like, all right, yeah, right. I'm talking like 4 days later, he sends me a text. He's like, hey, have you been in? I'm like, yeah, I've been in, but I haven't been in yet today. I'm on my way. He goes, there's going to be a surprise there for you. I go in. She hands me the apple crumb for free.
Yeah.
And it's like, Larry told me that you would like this. I try to eat healthy, but I can't resist them, and God bless Larry for bringing them in.
I don't try to eat healthy, and I love donuts. I can eat donuts, and Larry knows that's my weakness.
I love donuts. Who doesn't?
So it's funny. So Larry and Sonia came to my office one day, and I see Sonia, and I'm like, oh, I get excited because they're friends of mine. So I was like, oh, you should have brought your husband. And she's like, oh, he's here, right? And so I still can't see him because he's around the corner. I said, well, it's a good thing he didn't bring a box of donuts. And sure enough, I get around the corner, and Larry's got a dozen donuts waiting for me because he knows, like...
I'm with you, brother.
Dude, I've been to his house, and he has, like... I don't know if he still has this, and maybe it was just special for me. But you know how some people have a candy dish?
Yeah.
He had a munchkin dish.
Oh.
So I think by the time it was time to eat dinner, I already ate all the munchkins, and I didn't eat the dinner. So because but that's a local business that I know you and I both support.
Yep.
And so yeah, I love the local businesses that are here. It's funny you mentioned Piazza. We would go once a year when they first opened because I think. Yvette and I, we used to do date nights at the wine house.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, we'd always go in and we're like, man, this was such a special place. And we never really appreciated the food at Piazza. And that wasn't a knock on them, but we went to Italy. And we came back loving Italian food. So now we're there. It's now in our rotation. So we've gotten to know the owners, and it's been fun going in there.
Oh, yeah.
Just another local business that we can support. Matt, last question for you. I mean, Lake Nona's continuing to grow. What do you think's in the future for our community?
So, I'm going to sum it up with one word: excitement.
Yeah.
Right? I think when you've been out here as long as we have.
I'm just glad you didn't say traffic.
No, I would never say that on this because I wouldn't want to hear the post. But it is exciting, right? I mean, you think about it. You can go to USTA if you've never learned to play pickleball and go play pickleball. You can go to Boxy Park and you can see some great bands. You can have some great music. You can have some great beverages. You can go to all these local restaurants that we just talked about. You can go anywhere on the highway system because you're right here. Again, we've talked about moving. We're not. It's exciting. Now, do I sometimes miss a little bit older Lake Nona? Of course. I don't think if you have lived out here as long as we have, I don't think you can say that with a straight face if you haven't missed it a little bit. Right?
Absolutely.
But that's all of Orlando. It's all of Central Florida. So if you're going to experience this type of growth, experience in a place like Lake Nona because everything's here. We talk about this with a lot of our friends that live in other areas, and like, you guys could seriously eat at a different restaurant every day of the month. I go, absolutely. You can.
Yeah.
If you want fast food, if you want fine dining, if you want dessert, if you want coffee, you can do it all.
And it's crazy because you and I both kind of grew up in the same vicinity, Orange and Michigan, and that whole place has completely been changed. Almost all of those buildings have been wiped out and rebuilt and refurbished, and I miss it. My parents still live in the same house, and for 40 plus years now, and there's times I enjoy it, but guess what? traffic is just as bad downtown and South Orlando as it is in Lake Nona. I remember one day, for the longest time, it wasn't one day. Yvette's like, you need a hobby, because I was just real estate family. That's all I was doing, real estate family, and then veg out on the couch watching sports. And she's like, you need a hobby. And so I was like I was trying to explore all these hobbies. Like, what could I do? And I just came to the conclusion, like, Lake Nona's my hobby. Like, I enjoy, the Narcoossee news page where, we inform people about cool events and cool bands that are playing at Boxy Park, and promoting the local businesses, and meeting new people. And like I met, I'm going to butcher his name, but I'm just going to call him Dr. Paul. He's a doctor in the area. And we were emailing and texting. We were trying to get together for dinner one night. And it finally landed. We couldn't do it till 8 o'clock at night because he's got young kids. And I'm like, man, 8 o'clock, dude, I eat at 6.
Yeah.
And so he and I, we went to Nona Blue, and I had a great dinner. I'm like, man, I could hang out with Dr. Paul. Like, and why haven't we been hanging out before?
Yeah.
Just because the people are so special. And, so Lake Nona's kind of been my hobby, and I'm with you. It's an exciting place to live.
It's an exciting place to live.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. If you want more information about Bela Roofing, you definitely want to connect with Matt. His information is below, and he will definitely show up and give you a free assessment of your roof. You guys have a great day.